The words hit me like ice water in my veins. Nobody needs your money or you. My father's voice sliced through the warm, holiday chatter, and suddenly the cranberry sauce on my spoon looked like blood against the white china. The dining room didn't even pause. Mom kept carving the turkey. Jessica nodded like she'd been waiting years to hear someone say it out loud, and Uncle Robert reached for more stuffing as if my world hadn't just imploded. My grip tightened on the sterling silver handle until my knuckles went white. This was the same table where I'd announced my promotion 3 months ago, the same chairs where they'd celebrated my raises, the same family who'd called me their little success story when it served them. But now that the bills were paid and the emergencies handled, apparently I'd outlived my usefulness. My name is Olivia. I'm 34 and a senior financial analyst. This is the story of how I turned their calculated cruelty into calculated consequences. Growing up, I thought love meant being the family's shock absorber. When Jessica crashed Dad's car at 17, I used my college fund to cover the deductible. When Mom's boutique hemorrhaged money during the recession, I worked double shifts to keep it afloat. When Dad's business partner embezzled funds, guess whose savings account became the emergency bailout? Every crisis that should have been a family discussion became my personal responsibility. But the funny thing about being indispensable is that people start to resent you for it. They begin to see your help as a reminder of their failures, your stability as a reproach to their chaos. What started as gratitude slowly curdled into entitlement, then resentment, then this dinner table dismissal served with a side of sweet potato casserole. "Pass the wine," Jessica said, avoiding my eyes. She'd perfected this trick over the years, requesting something just to break the tension after someone delivered a particularly brutal blow. Last month, when I'd refused to co-sign her 4th credit card, she'd asked for salt. The month before, when I wouldn't pay for her vacation, she'd suddenly needed the bathroom. Tonight, wine seemed fitting. Mom finally looked up from the turkey, her smile stretched thin as phyllo dough. "Honey, your father didn't mean it like that. We're just saying you don't have to carry everyone's burdens. You work so hard already. We worry about you burning out for nothing important." For nothing important. The phrase hung in the air like smoke from a kitchen fire. My career, my achievements, my carefully built life, all worthless because they weren't serving the family machine. I watched Mom's face, searching for any flicker of awareness about what she'd just said. Nothing. Just that practiced expression of manufactured concern she'd perfected over decades of emotional manipulation. Dad waved his hand dismissively. "Let's not make this dramatic. It's just the truth. You take everything so personally." That's when it clicked. Not like a light bulb, but like a lock tumbling open. This wasn't an argument or a misunderstanding. This was a performance, carefully choreographed to put me back in my place. They'd planned this. The timing, the witnesses, the casual cruelty, all designed to remind me that my value was conditional, that my seat at this table depended on my willingness to fund their lives without question. I set down my spoon with surgical precision and reached for my napkin. The simple motion seemed to shift something in the room's energy. Jessica noticed first, her eyes narrowing. Mom paused mid-slice. "I hear you loud and clear," I said, my voice steady as a heartbeat. Dad smiled, satisfied. "Good. Then we can all move on." But as I stood and walked toward the hallway to collect my coat, I felt something inside me crystallize. They wanted me gone? Perfect. They wanted independence from my money? They were about to get exactly that, along with some independence they never asked for. I didn't slam the door. I closed it gently, like shutting a book I'd finally finished reading. The drive home passed in a blur of streetlights and revelations. Every memory was reframing itself. Every emergency I'd handled, every crisis I'd solved, every time they'd made me feel guilty for hesitating to help. By the time I reached my apartment, my hands weren't shaking from hurt anymore. They were steady with purpose. That same evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and opened the folder I'd been maintaining for years without really knowing why: family financial records. Bank transfers, loan co-signings, credit card payments. 7 years of documentation spread across spreadsheets that told a story I'd been too close to see clearly. The patterns were undeniable. Emergency after emergency, each one positioned as temporary, each one somehow becoming my permanent responsibility. Jessica's one-time car payment that had stretched into 3 years of installments. Dad's business loan that I'd co-signed and somehow ended up paying solo mom's boutique expenses that had quietly migrated from her account to mine. I picked up my phone and dialed the number I'd saved months ago, but never called. A financial crimes attorney Stephanie had recommended when I'd mentioned my family's money issues over drinks. Davidson and Associates, how can I help you? I need to speak with attorney Rebecca Davidson about potential financial exploitation, I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. I can schedule a consultation for tomorrow morning. Actually, I said, scrolling through the evidence on my screen, I think this qualifies as urgent. The next morning, Rebecca Davidson reviewed my documentation with the focused intensity of a surgeon examining x-rays. She asked pointed questions about consent, about whether I'd voluntarily agreed to ongoing financial support versus emergency assistance, about the pattern of emotional coercion surrounding each request. This isn't family helping family, she said finally. This is systematic financial exploitation, the emotional manipulation, the guilt tactics, the pattern of manufactured emergencies. It's textbook abuse. What are my options? She leaned back in her chair. We can file complaints with both the Financial Crimes Unit and pursue civil remedies. But understand, once we start this process, your relationship with your family will never be the same. I thought about Dad's dismissive wave, Mom's casual cruelty, Jessica's smirk. It already isn't the same, I said. They ended it last night. I'm just making it official. 2 weeks after filing the complaint, the investigation moved faster than I'd expected. Detective Martinez called to schedule interviews. The Financial Crimes Unit had reviewed my evidence and found sufficient grounds to proceed with charges related to financial misconduct. Apparently, the co-signed loan that Dad had abandoned and the credit cards I'd been paying without being an authorized user constituted illegal activity. We'll need to speak with each family member individually, Detective Martinez explained. And Miss Chen, you should know, they've been trying to contact you through our office. I had changed my phone number and blocked all their social media accounts the day after our confrontation. But somehow Jessica had managed to call the police station 17 times trying to reach me. The day of the confrontation, I arrived at my parents' house just as Detective Martinez and his partner were walking up the front steps. I'd timed it perfectly. I wanted to see their faces when they realized this wasn't just me being dramatic. Mom answered the door in her bathrobe, her face crumpling when she saw the badges. "There's been a mistake," she started, but Detective Martinez stepped inside with quiet authority. "We're here regarding financial misconduct charges filed by Olivia Chen. We need to speak with Jessica Miller, Robert, and Linda Chen." The living room felt smaller with strangers in it. Jessica sat frozen on the couch, her usual swagger completely absent. Dad stood by the fireplace trying to project authority, but his hands were trembling slightly. Mom hovered near the kitchen doorway, like she might bolt. "This is a family matter," Dad said. "Whatever my daughter told you, it's been taken out of context." Detective Martinez opened his folder. "Mr. Chen, are you saying you didn't abandon a $40,000 business loan that your daughter co-signed in 2019? The room went dead silent. "And Ms. Miller," the detective continued, "did you or did you not use credit cards registered to your sister's address for purchases totaling over $15,000? Jessica's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Mom turned to me with tears streaming. "Olivia, tell them this isn't what it looks like. We're family." I met her gaze steadily. "You told me nobody needed my money or me," I said, "so I stopped giving you both." "We were upset," she pleaded. "We didn't mean—" "You meant it enough to say it," I interrupted, "in front of the whole family, at dinner, like it was something you'd all been thinking for a long time." The questioning continued for 2 hours. Dates, amounts, documentation. Jessica tried to claim ignorance. Dad attempted to reframe everything as voluntary gifts. Mom cried and begged me to intervene. But the numbers didn't lie, and neither did the evidence. Years of emergencies that had drained my accounts. Loans I'd co-signed and ended up paying alone credit cards they'd used without permission. The pattern was clear, systematic, and according to Detective Martinez, legally problematic. As they prepared to leave, Dad made one last desperate play. "If you pursue this, don't bother coming back. You're destroying this family." For years, that threat had been enough to keep me in line. The fear of losing them, of being alone, of being labeled as the daughter who chose money over family. But standing in that living room, watching them scramble to avoid consequences they'd spent years earning, I felt nothing but clarity. "I already left this family," I said quietly. "Last night at dinner. You just didn't notice." The aftermath unfolded exactly as I'd expected. Jessica's accounts were frozen pending investigation. Dad faced potential consequences for loan misconduct. Mom's boutique was flagged for suspicious financial activity. The uncle who'd reached for stuffing while I was being dismantled called to offer support, suddenly concerned about family unity. 6 months later, the legal proceedings concluded with Jessica agreeing to a repayment plan and community service, while Dad's case was resolved through financial restitution and probation. Mom's boutique investigation found no additional wrongdoing beyond the documented transfers to my accounts. Uncle Robert, perhaps wisely, ceased contact entirely after his initial hollow gesture of concern. What surprised me was how little their panic moved me. 9 months after that dinner, sitting in my new apartment 2 states away, I felt something I'd never experienced before. Peace. Not the artificial quiet that comes from avoiding conflict, but the deep stillness that comes from finally living authentically. My phone still buzzes with their attempts at reconciliation, though I've had to change my number twice and maintain strict privacy settings to limit their access. Long emails about misunderstandings and family bonds, tearful voicemails about forgiveness and moving forward, messages from relatives urging me to be the bigger person. But they're missing the point entirely. This was never about revenge or punishment. It was about finally matching my actions to their words. They said nobody needed my money or me, so I gave them the independence they claimed to want. They said I took things too personally, so I started taking legal theft very personally indeed. Some nights I think about that dinner, about the moment when their casual cruelty finally freed me from the obligation to absorb it. I used to believe that family loyalty meant endless endurance, that love required constant sacrifice, that belonging had a price I was obligated to pay. But love without respect isn't family. It's exploitation with better marketing. And walking away wasn't abandonment. It was finally respecting myself enough to demand what I'd been giving freely for years. If you're sitting at your own dinner table right now, listening to people diminish your worth while expecting your support, know this: you don't have to stay. You don't have to absorb their cruelty. You don't have to fund people who can't even summon basic gratitude, let alone love. Your silence doesn't have to be surrender. Sometimes it can be strategy. Share your story in the comments if you're ready. Hit subscribe if you want to see more people choose themselves over systems designed to drain them. And remember, family is what you create, not just what you're born into. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.